Hello, my name is Jake, and welcome to the very first episode of A Camera You May Have Never Heard of. So I wanted to start out by stating that by no means am I a camera know-it-all. I haven't used every camera in existence, nor will I ever, but I have used a lot of cameras in my time, and a lot of my experience comes from going out to garage sales, finding cameras that I had never seen or heard of before, and playing around with them, using them for a little while, and kind of learning what I'm comfortable with, learning about different types of cameras, and that's where my journey with photography started, and that's where the inspiration for this series kind of came from. That being said, the first camera that we're looking at is actually not one that I found at a garage sale or a thrift store. It's one that I actually found here in the studio that I manage. While doing some spring cleaning, I found it in its box on the shelf and decided that this would be a great camera to kind of start this series off with. It's definitely something that's a little bit different and bizarre and something that I had never heard of or seen before, and I thought would be cool to share with you guys. And so that camera we're talking about today is a Nikon. Definitely not any of these Nikon here. These are some of my daily cameras or part of my collection. But the camera that we're going to be talking about today is the Nikon Coolpix 990, which is this funky little guy right here. So the Coolpix 990 is very different right out the gate. You know, when you look at it, it's got this very DSLR style grip. It has a spinny dial on the back like you normally would and the power switch on top. But where it kind of differs is its rotating swiveling lens that can go into, you know, the forward-facing mode just like your normally a camera would, but it also can rotate towards myself like a selfie camera, which I immediately thought was just so cool and bizarre, especially in the era that was well before vlogging or even selfies on cell phones was a thing, that this was kind of doing that, which is great for, you know, traveling with family and friends and getting photos of a group while being able to see the screen and everything like that. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to get into some details about this camera, some specs. We're going to get some nice close-up shots of the camera so you can kind of see the small details and everything. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and take this thing out on the streets and we're going to do some street photography with it. And we'll talk about that here in a moment, but let's go ahead and let's grab our handy dandy little notebook here and let's go over some of the details and the specs of this camera while we look at some nice little B-roll footage of this camera here. So the Nikon Coolpix 990 was released in January of 2000. As of filming this video, that's 23 years ago. And 23 years ago, this camera retailed for about $1,000. Nowadays, you can find this camera from anywhere from $30 to $40 to maybe $100, depending on the condition and what it includes, and if it has the box and so on and so forth. I am lucky to kind of have everything the box included, and so it's a kind of a complete set. So it's a cool little collector's piece. But for $1,000 back in the year 2000, you got an 8 to 24 millimeter 2.5 to f4 lens with a whopping 3.3 megapixel sensor behind it. It also only had a max ISO of 400. I couldn't imagine being limited to that ISO professionally nowadays, but again, early era of digital, you got what you got. It also only had 5 autofocus points with a little point and shoot that really doesn't matter all that much, I guess. It has a tiny little 1.8 inch LCD screen on the back. It also does have an optical viewfinder, which is nice. And it only takes 4 AA batteries. It doesn't have some proprietary battery with some proprietary charger. So it is quite nice to buy this, throw in some batteries, and just kind of use it without having to worry about an old battery not lasting. Some novelty features about the Coolpix 990 is I love these purple accents and this cool little logo on the side. It's just something different that you don't really see on any modern cameras. Everything's so just plain and vanilla nowadays, but you know, it is what it is. But my favorite feature so far, I think, is the Nikon logo on the front here. It has this wonderful little oil slick kind of rainbow reflection design that I really wish we saw on more cameras. I just think that's really cool and unique, very late 90s, and I love it. Also, a little feature that I also get a kick out of is the tiniest Nikon lens cap I have ever seen. I think it's adorable. You can check it out here in this little shot. I just think it looks fantastic. So with all that being said, we're going to go ahead and put down our little notebook here. We're going to go out to downtown and we're going to do some street photography with the Coolpix 990. We're going to see what kind of colors we get out of it, see if it's got a retro look, see if it looks like any other camera. You know, it's a cheap little point and shoot, so you never know. This might be your next camera that you want to buy to just take some photos when you and your friends are hanging out or when you're traveling with family. And yeah, let's go ahead and let's hit the streets, see what this thing does. We're going to throw up a little slideshow right after this, and then we're going to convene back here and we're going to talk about the results, and at the end of it, see what I think about the Coolpix 990 23 years later. So bear with me, and let's see what we get. Alright, so we're here at the review station ready to talk about the experience with the Coolpix 990. So yesterday I got to shoot with two cameras actually. One was the Coolpix, the other was for a camera for a future video, so keep an eye out for that one. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these pictures. Just a heads up, I threw up some edited and unedited versions of each photo just so you could see the differences and what it's like throwing some edits on top of some JPEGs from a camera from 20 years ago. Now, with that being said, the experience with the Coolpix 990 was a little bit of a slow process to say the least. The startup time took anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 seconds, sometimes depending, with also a buffer time in between shots of about 5 to 10 seconds as well. So it is not a fast camera at all. Now, granted, that could be a testament to the cold. It was a little bit chilly out when I was shooting. But besides that, it has a very natural ergonomic DSLR style grip that you're very used to if you've been shooting with DSLRs for quite a long time like myself. The only difference being that the viewfinder is all the way off to the farthest end of the left side of the camera, opposed to being kind of in that top center point like most viewfinders are on DSLRs. And so when shooting with it, I kind of kept having to find myself looking at the camera and moving myself over to the left more to look through the viewfinder to compose my shot. So that was a little bit frustrating at times. But besides that, it was quite a fun little camera to shoot with. As a snappy little autofocus. The exposures all came out spot on. I didn't have any exposure issues whatsoever. Same with focus. I didn't have any of the photos drop focus or anything like that. And we got some interesting colors out of these raw shots. Really nice blues. I think that's my favorite, is how vibrant the blues are in these photos. And it made for some cool little edits, as we can see here. And so besides that, I would say that that was kind of the experience shooting with the 990. The battery life lasted for about an hour and a half, which wasn't too bad, you know, for just a couple of AA's inside of a little digital camera. But would I recommend going out and buying this camera and making it your daily? Probably not, you know. It is a 20-year-old camera. It takes completely fine photos. I was actually very surprised with how nice these photos look. They're not pixelated. They're not super noisy or grainy or anything. They look great. Besides that, you know, if you're ever at a thrift store or a garage sale and you happen to come upon one of these for a good price, by all means snag it. It is a fun little camera to have in your collection, and to switch things up sometimes, you know. Now, with that being said, I actually happen to be watching the movie Holes this weekend, and notice in this little clip here that the police officer is holding and taking photos of Stanley's room with a Coolpix 990. Thought that was funny, you know. I was like, hey, making a video of that camera right now. And so anyways, guys, that is going to be it for today's episode. I appreciate you hanging out with me and watching along. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions, just let me know down in the comments below. And I will see you guys on the next episode of A Camera You May Have Never Heard Of.